So recently I started rewatching Stranger Things and I've noticed something very peculiar. A show that used to look like this ended up looking like this. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, it is nothing but the realism of the story. And while I could approach this realism from so many different angles, what I want to emphasize is the most glaring one, the cinematography. The one factor that completely changed my viewing experience of Stranger Things. Do you remember watching the first season? Think specifically about the visuals, the forests, the streets, the rooms. They all had a sense of naturalism to it. It was like you were viewing a slice of life. No matter how fictional the story was being told, Hawkins felt real. It felt natural. The cinematography allowed it to be something more than just fiction. And this is what made the debut season so good, because it was made to look ordinary, nothing flashy, nothing extravagant, just a bunch of people from a small town investigating the case of a missing boy. This was as relatable as it could get, but the cinematography also allowed it to be exactly that. For instance, you look at the style of the filmmaking itself. This is a frame from the first season. Before I say anything, what does this frame feel like? If you had never watched Stranger Things before, if you were seeing this frame for the first time, what does the image imply? What feeling does it capture? If you haven't figured it out yet, how about this frame? Or this one? Or even this one? Well, all of these frames fall under something called observational filmmaking, sometimes even stretching to be voyeuristic, where you are an observer to an incident or a conversation, and you feel like you're intruding on the story. In episode 6, Dustin and Mike are looking for Eleven, and they stumble upon a commotion in the streets. They quickly realize Eleven must have been the reason for it, and they bike towards the commotion. But notice where they place the camera. For some reason, the camera is hiding in a bush. It feels like we are observing what they're doing. It's almost intrusive the way the camera is spying on them. But then again, the camera suggests what the narrative does. The kids are being watched. They're being chased. They are being observed. And this style of filmmaking is all over the first season, where the camera acts like a quiet witness to the story that's being played out here. There are not enough shots that emphasize the importance of these characters. They're just there on the frame, doing what they're doing, without knowing how important they are in the story. And this is why you could say that the camera is reacting here. It's reacting to a situation rather than anticipating the importance of a moment. But in later seasons, the camera sort of does the exact opposite. Rather than observational filmmaking, you get more of a performance. Action shots, hero push-ins, and center framing, everything is anticipated. The camera doesn't react to an incident. It's constantly telling you what to look at and how much importance it has. These are shots that are designed to be memorable, not something that you stumble upon. And when the camera knows too much about a situation, about a scene, the realism collapses. It becomes a spectacle. And you could extend the capability of this filmmaking to the compositions as well. In the first season, the frames are often organic. There is an intentional asymmetry to it, where you have characters framed in compositions that makes you feel like the camera got hurried while filming, almost as if the camera arrived late to the scene and there was no time for staging or symmetry. You just pulled the camera out of your bag and captured something. And that's how you get frames like this, where the subject is not the center of attention. The camera is just observing the subject from a distance. And again, not to say there isn't any symmetry here, but not as much as you'd find in the later seasons. Here, there's also a great deal of emphasis towards negative space. Look at this frame for example. Joyce is sitting inside a cabinet. The frame is pretty big, and she only takes up a small portion on the lower right side of it. The rest of it is pretty much negative space. There's bookshelves and tables and a couch and TV and boxes and lights, all of which are overloading the frame. All of which makes the subject feel inconsequential and powerless. And that's basically the role of negative space in the whole season. It creates this uneasiness, this vulnerability that every single character feels within our story. And as for the audience, you just can't escape the rawness of the framing. The visuals are composed to make you feel this is real. And similarly, the cinematography is also influenced by the lighting choices, some of which goes through a drastic metamorphosis as the story progresses. In the earlier seasons, the lighting is diegetic, meaning the sources of light are from within the world itself. For instance, most of the lighting in Joyce's house emanates from normal sources of light. There are lamps and candles and windows that create what can only be described as naturalism. When you see the lights flickering or the candles fading, the light changes accordingly. The effects of it looks realistic on the objects and characters who interact with the lighting. And by doing that, you don't question the realism of it, because if the characters can justify the lighting within their own world, so can the audience. Take a look at this frame for another. This is one of my favorites. Look at how the rays of light illuminate the dog and the rest of it gets dispersed into the ambience, creating this beautiful atmospheric effect within the room. We got two natural sources of light over here and another in the shape of this candle flame. While this could potentially be artificial sources of light that are mimicking naturalism, for our eyes, this looks real. By all accounts, this is a frame from your everyday life, because we have all seen this in reality, and therefore this scene becomes relatable. But when you move on to the later seasons, although you'd be able to find such naturalistic lighting if you look for it, the intentionality is focused on the other things. The lighting in these scenes doesn't quite feel realistic because it's not diegetic. Take this frame for example. Everything here looks perfectly lit, and on first impression, you'd just think it's normal, right? Well, maybe if you have been watching Netflix for all these years, then yeah, maybe. But can you really pinpoint the light sources here? Or even try to describe why their faces are perfectly lit in this frame? And the same thing happens here, and also here. The characters, even in a setting that is supposed to be dark, you still kinda see their faces. And when you look at a frame such as this, look at the clear separation of the character from the background. And again, if you look for the light sources, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find it somewhere. But my point is, this isn't diegetic. These characters are lit in a way that doesn't justify the reality of a scene such as this. It is stylized in a way to create a sense of perfection. Because if you're looking for realism, you'd light it like this. It is exactly the same shot, the same character, similar settings. But in this frame, you can clearly tell where the light is coming from. This is the highlights or the rim light, and on the other side you have the shadows. There is no gimmick here. It's exactly how things would look in the real world. But here, on first impression, it's hard to tell how many light sources there are. There's a bit of a rim light over here, but then there's highlights on the cap. And then when you look at the overall character, there aren't any shadows here. Everything looks kinda evenly lit. And they consistently insist on this flat, diffused style, especially while lighting the characters. And again, not saying there are naturalistic lighting in there, they definitely do exist. But more often than not, there's diffusion everywhere, not enough contrast with respect to the skin tones, and the much obvious suppression of darkness. It's almost like they're afraid of the shadows, that they chose to light every character pretty evenly. And while we're at it, the colors also evolved to be something symbolic. In the first season, everything's pretty muted. The color palettes are environmental. There's a lot of earthy browns and mellow greens that don't jump at your face. They're not saturated and neither are they bright, which means the colors don't stand out. When you look at a frame such as this, the story doesn't use any kind of symbolism through its colors. It's just there in the environment, natural as it could possibly get. But in the later seasons, the colors get punchy, they get vibrant, and the saturation goes through the roof. There's a lot of neons that are added to the mix, and these colors become symbolic. This is stylistic. It can be cinematic. It can even be used to tell a story. But what it isn't is realistic. This is not a real frame in the sense that your mind doesn't relate to colors being this out of place. Don't get me wrong, I love the color grading and the color palettes in season 3 and 4, but as far as realism goes, at this point, it doesn't really matter to the story, because here, it becomes a spectacle, so it doesn't need to look like this at all. And finally, you just can't not talk about the editing styles. There's a reason why you feel a sense of immersion while you're watching the first season. These scenes have an intentional slower pacing. Often the scenes linger.
You heard it, right?
Yeah, I heard a baby.
What? Mike, you up?
The camera stays on a shot a little longer than it normally would.
I don't know.
The pacing here is that of a drama, not an action sci-fi thriller. And that resonates with the realism of the story. No matter what scene it is, it doesn't have a lot of cuts. It allows the viewer to slowly delve into a scene like a fly on the wall. In this shot, Lucas sets off on his bike to investigate something. But notice how patient the camera is. Unlike some of the later seasons, where you get a sense of urgency, this shot is a single take. He notices a strange man. Camera cuts, he gets on his bike, and the shot then waits for Lucas to nearly bike off the frame. They could have cut here, here, or here, but no, they wanted the pacing to be slow, to let the audience take in the environment. And here we have another scene. Eleven flips the van, the kids escape, and this should be the point where it cuts. Or maybe even here. The message is clear, but the camera then goes back to the same shot, and now you see the kids on the same road but at a distance. This was not a shot that was necessary here, but they put it in anyway for the immersion, and from this, there's more knowledge that you can gain here. There's a road over here, and even though you don't know if that road is what leads to this place, you could probably connect the dots, and that's how the story breathes. It's awkward sometimes. The silence, the extra shot here,
Barb?
the extra second there. It intentionally creates realistic tension, something that you miss with precisional cutting. In the later seasons, although you do get moments like this, it feels imbalanced. The music is always driving the story, and things happen on cue, not incidentally. The real world of Stranger Things always linger. The conversations, the environment, it reminds you even after you go to the next shot that hey, this is a real tangible world, not one that we designed for this story. And that's something that I really missed with the story's progression. Here, the world was edited to be immersive and realistic, while here, it only serves as a tool to move the story forward. And that's why the intent matters. The realism of Stranger Things was something that was done on purpose. Active choices were made to light things a certain kind of way. Cameras, lenses, editing styles, colors, they were selectively picked to create a world that felt relatable. But later seasons changed the narrative of the story, and all of a sudden, a little dramatic sci-fi horror turned into something more than what it ever should be. It became a spectacle. And that same intent went towards the other things. Things like CGI and visual effects, the scale, the action, the branding, and possibly even fan service. And while this doesn't mean the cinematography automatically gets bad, because I can tell you that it doesn't, what it actually does is change the visual intent of the story. If the earlier seasons were asking, what would this look like in reality? The later seasons asked, what's the coolest way to shoot this? And while neither approach to cinematography is wrong, only one of them can truly feel real.